Hi, I'm Andrew Thomas. I studied physics in the James Clerk Maxwell Building in Edinburgh University and received my doctorate from Swansea University in 1992. I have agreed to be interviewed by Don Head about my book Hidden in Plain Sight 3, The Secret of Time. No, I disagree with Tim. I would suggest that it makes no logical sense to suggest that the passage of time exists. And I think it is important to state at the outset that my objection would be shared by the majority of physicists as it represents the orthodox view. Tim Maudlin appears to have several unorthodox views about physics. That does not necessarily mean his views are wrong, but, in this particular case, I am sure he is wrong. I have no problem with philosophers giving views on physics, but they should be careful that their arguments are not logically inconsistent. Which is the case with Tim Maudlin. Yes, Tim's view about the passage of time might appear intuitively correct, but it is still wrong. To see why the passage of time must be an illusion, I would ask you to consider the current moment as a now point on a line representing the time dimension. This now point divides the line of time into the past and the future. If the passage of time does exist, then that now point must move along the line, from an earlier time to a later time. But, if you argue that the passage of time does exist, then you need to be able to answer the question of how fast does it move. At what speed does time pass? You might answer that it moves at a speed of 1 second per second, but that is a meaningless tautology. It is therefore illogical to suggest that time flows. The only solution is that we live in what is known as the block universe, in which all times exist, all times are equally real. Imagine copies of yourself existing at all points in your life. At each point you would feel as though that particular moment was special. But, in fact, there is nothing special about any particular moment in time. There is no now moment, and no flow of time. This is beautifully illustrated by a quotation from Albert Einstein. After hearing of the death of his lifelong friend Michel Besso, Einstein wrote a letter to Besso's family saying, "Now he has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me." That means nothing. People like us, who believe in physics, know that the distinction between past, present and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. So Bergson believed a newborn baby would not experience time at all. The baby would have to learn to create its own model of time in its head as it grew up. These philosophical arguments, which seem to suggest that time purely existed as a subjective notion in our heads, were swept away by Albert Einstein at the start of the 20th century. Einstein was greatly influenced by the philosopher-physicist Ernst Mach, who was an advocate of logical positivism. According to logical positivism, physics should only make statements about phenomena which could be directly observed and measured. Using logical positivism as his guide, Einstein simply stated, "Time is what we measure with a clock." According to Einstein, there was no place in physics for philosophical musings about the nature of time. All that was important was what could be measured. Let me introduce Jeff Drake, and read from his blog. As I stated in the introduction to my series about time, I am going to introduce you to a number of philosophers, and their theories, who are important to the field of study known as the philosophy of time, a field that is these days being called the philosophy of space and time. They will not necessarily be in any specific order, and I will certainly not come anywhere close to covering all the various personalities who have pursued an answer to the question, what is time? After all, this is a topic that has been undergoing discussion since the ancient Greeks. Still, certain people, some of whom are gone, others still with us, are worth noting for their ideas which have had, and continue to have, an important impact on this field of study. For this reason, I am going to anoint each of my personal favorites with the title of Time Lord, with a wink and a nod towards Doctor Who, of course. As I stated in the introduction to my series about time, I am going to introduce you to a number of philosophers, and their theories, who are important to the field of study known as the philosophy of time, a field that is these days being called the philosophy of space and time. Now, let me introduce Don Head. I will let Don speak for himself. Hello everyone. First, please understand that if you are watching this video, it is because you were invited. You didn't just stumble here looking for a Facebook chum. You're welcome to stay in any event. Thank you, Dr. Thomas and Jeff, for the introduction. I think it is fair to say that many people sense that humanity is at a crossroads in terms of how, or if, we move forward. I want to initiate a forum where we can discuss strategies. If you are interested in participating and have an open mind, are open to recognizing that our most cherished beliefs could be wrong, then you are the target audience that Jeff speaks about. Welcome.